the spring of 2023, the Rams, with their fifth-round pick in the NFL draft, 177th overall, found the player that a few months later the entire football world would be talking about. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. Comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Puka Nacua in that 2023 season had 105 catches for 1,486 yards, 6 touchdowns, which isn't all that great, but 68 first downs. He had a long of 80, a catch percentage of 65.6%. And it didn't take long. If you'll recall, by the end of September, he'd become a household name. And by season's end, he'd become a franchise fixture. Nacua's story isn't common, but it's also not super rare. What's cool about it is that it becomes kind of the model that everybody cites everywhere for the player that they'd like to have show up in their training camp and their preseason and their September and change everybody's outlook on the group as a whole. Well, I've got something to say about Puka this morning, and it's got nothing to do with him. And that's Caleb Johnson. I'm going to share with you something that's unscientific, possibly even unsubstantiated, and it's supported really only by some stuff that I heard through OTAs and minicamp, and some stuff that's still resonating today as something of an after effect. But first, do you guys remember when I shared with you the story from a couple of years ago that George Pickens, when he'd been in the fold for the first time in the summer, Mike Tomlin was wary of the word getting out about what George could do. Now, of course, the word had been out. He had an entire college career. He did some amazing things at that level, but there's something different about when it happens in any NFL setting. It's instant validation in the NFL world. So whatever it was that you thought of Puka at Washington or BYU, it wasn't going to matter until he was wearing LA blue and gold and showing something with it. Same applied to George. Same applies to almost everybody, actually. So when George started doing stuff in these routine drills, and I've shared with you many times that OTAs and minicamp, the only position that you can judge in any way is wide receiver, because you're still putting the ball up and you're still asking the player to go up and get it, which is pretty much what they do on Sundays. And George was already doing ridiculous things. And Tomlin, conspicuously, I might add, approached a team official in the locker room after one of those sessions and said, "Man, let's do what we can to keep a lid on this guy." Meaning he didn't want the word out. He didn't want anybody knowing that the Steelers had a special talent, which of course they did, and of course now Dallas does. No one would deny George's talent. George does things on the field that, humans can't do. Now, I'm not going to tell you that my choice for the Steelers' Puka potential player, if you will, has come with that sort of internal buzz, but there is and has been and will continue to be a bona fide buzz about Caleb Johnson. That's not to suggest that the Steelers would value him more than, say, Derek Harmon. Harmon was their first rounder for a reason. Johnson was their third rounder for a reason. But I can tell you that if they had a second rounder, there's a really, really good chance it would have been invested in Johnson. That's how much they thought of him at draft time. That's how much they wanted him. In parentheses, that's also testament to the patience that Omar Khan was able to show in keeping himself from trading up to get the kid, end parentheses. And that'd explain also why Arthur Smith and a lot of other offensive types with the team were literally celebrating after the pick. Sometimes we just say, oh, yeah, they shook hands, they high-fived or whatever. They were actually actively celebrating getting Johnson. And still, since then, their perception of him has only taken off. He has work to do. They'll acknowledge that. He's acknowledged that to me. They're going to run him through the ringer in Latrobe, particularly as it applies to pass blocking. You're going to hear, I believe, from Mike Tomlin, some downplaying of him out there, but that's part of that game. That's part of what happens out there that month. What I have heard is that he's going to be on the field a lot, and he's going to be on the field a lot early in the season. They're not going to wait on this. And if he can play, and I mean play with a capital P, he's going to get that ball, and he's going to get the opportunity to run with it, really run with it. No, he's not a fifth rounder, and no, he wasn't the 177th, but if he makes a name for himself that quickly at that position, playing for this team, with all the attention that this quarterback's going to get, yeah, there could be some Puka to that. When we come back, J1Q.
This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar.
Today's J1Q comes from Zach, who says, I love the idea of Aaron Rodgers mentoring Will Howard. It gives him the best chance to be successful, if you ask me. How to see things in the field, how to study film, how to work with pass catchers, make the most out of them. My question for you, DK, is how do the Steelers determine whether Howard has made enough progress that they would want him to start and not draft a quarterback next year? Considering his draft position, the 6th round, the strength of the class next year, that seems like a big leap. I'm going to respectfully and maybe a little bit playfully disagree with you here, Zach, in that I don't see it as a big leap. I see it as impossible. I don't see the path through which Howard can show the Steelers, hey, that's it. You have found your guy. Forget about quarterback in the draft. I just don't see that. If Rodgers gets hurt, Mason Rudolph's replacing him. If Mason gets hurt and Rodgers is still out, they're going to find somebody from somewhere else. They're not going to throw that kid out there into that fire until they're certain that he's ready. And that's not going to happen with this kid running scout team in practices. It's just not. But I'm going to throw this your way as well. This comes up quite a bit. Howard's made an impression on the city, mostly, obviously, through his personality. So I get the eagerness around him. I really do. He's fun to be around. In most cases where a team finds a young quarterback, the young quarterback who's going to be their franchise guy, it's not because they just picked one correctly. It's because they go through the ringer. They try several guys. It's not the ones that always get the notice or the attention, the ones that come with an obvious hierarchy like Jordan Love in Green Bay. And actually before that, Rodgers himself in Green Bay following Brett Favre, where you go, okay, we see them coming. We're getting braced for them. They're going to be it. That's not the norm. Everybody wants it to be their norm. Everybody wants to have Joe Montana and then Steve Young. It just tends not to work out like that very often. In most cases, you're trying a young quarterback, and then you're seeing if he can handle adversity. And then you're seeing if he can handle another year of it. And you keep pushing with other young quarterbacks in some cases. Ben Roethlisberger once replied to a question about RG3, Robert Griffin, and the start that he had to his career in Washington and how awesome it was and what it's like for the NFL to have what at the time was a bunch of young quarterbacks. And Ben's response, which should be played by everybody around the league to this day, was essentially, see me in 3 years. Now, that might have sounded like, a little bit of, not jealousy or whatever, but being put off by the kids getting the attention or whatever. He turned out to be totally right. He turned out to be 100% right, chiefly about RG3. And because Ben was part of the Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning class of 2004, that's still and probably always going to be considered one of the best quarterback classes the league's ever seen, he would only look more and more right about that with every passing year that those three would stay in the league in starting roles. And that's one of the reasons that I've been advocating for months now that the Steelers need to go at this quarterback pursuit with all guns blazing, both this year and next year. They have decided very clearly to not do that this year. But it's going to take more. It's going to take more than anything that Howard could do this coming camp, preseason, regular season, whatever, and probably more than anything he could do next year, regardless of how that draft goes. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. We'll be back with another one tomorrow. And don't forget that we have a double shot of Steelers coming your way today. That's our live video program, 4 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, of course, on the DK Pittsburgh Sports app and website. Hope to see you then.